Hello, this is Girls, Girls, Girls. I'm Sarah, and I'm very lucky to be joined by the very, very nice proper sick poet, Hollie McNish. Hello.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So you're in Cardiff at the moment, performing at the Wales Millennium Centre tonight. Are you excited? How do you feel?
Yeah, I feel good. I've never been here before, and I'm very excited. Last time I was here, I was at the Moon Club, and it was a very different atmosphere. So yeah, and I've got one of my favourite poets supporting it, as well as you, Vanessa Kasule. So it's always nice when she's here as well. Yeah, it should be fun. Hopefully.
Amazing. And you're here with your new book as well, right? It's like a book tour.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna be sick.
Oh,
so how long have you been performing, roughly, would you say?
I guess since I was about... I said this last time and then somebody was like, no, because I saw you at an open mic before then, so sorry if I get it wrong. I think since I was about 24. So I think that was the first time, but I don't know if I call it performing. That was the first time I ever read a poem ever to anyone other than my mum and my boyfriend at the time. So that was like my first reading. So yeah, I guess that's it. And then I've been doing it sort of full time for about 5 years, I think now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so quite a while. I don't know, but maybe not as long as a lot of other poets that I know.
But had you been writing like your whole life, pretty much? Or?
Yeah. So I've been writing. I don't mean I've been writing loads and loads when I was a kid, but yeah, since I was about 8, I think I always put the date and my age on every poem I'd ever written, and the time normally. I don't know why. I'm like, I don't know. A bit funny about it. But so the first 2 I wrote when I was 8, and then I didn't write that many then, but then when I was a teenager, from about 13, then all my diaries were just all written in poems. So there's quite a lot from the age of about 13 upwards.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So as a writer, what kind of moves you to write? Like, how do you start writing?
I don't know exactly. I think, like, when I was little, I was going to say I just wrote for fun, but actually it wasn't, because the first 2 poems that I wrote, one of them was about litter picking. So I've been on a school litter picking trip, so it was about the world being like not polluted and butterflies in the sky and like basically stop polluting, and how much I liked rainbows. So, and then the other one was like really rude about my mum and my dad and my brother, and I called my dad a twat because he didn't like cats. Like, it was a very simple rhyme poem when I was 8, and I think he wouldn't let me have a cat, so it was like
that's fair enough,
an angry poem. And I don't think it's changed that much. Like, I have things that I find really amazing and I want to write about, or something that I'm particularly angry about, or, to be honest, a lot of the time if I just read, I don't read a lot of fiction. I've only just started now, but I've always read a lot of like fact books, and the more I read, the more I write. So I tend to sort of summarise chapters of books with poems, and then when I was doing my GCSEs, I used to write poems about like physics equations to try and learn like what the velocity equation was and stuff. So yeah, just all sorts of different reasons.
So you've got like really famous, right, in terms of a poet for sure. Like millions of people literally watch your videos, right? That's like a fact, isn't it?
Yeah.
So like, I'm interested as a writer. Like, does that now affect how you write your poems?
Oh, that's a nice question. No, I don't think so. I was worried that it would at first. So when I started, the first time I did an open mic, I got asked to do another one, so I was quite lucky, and then I got asked to do another one, and it kind of escalated quite quickly, and I was sort of worried that when I started, because I've always just written, and sometimes I don't write for a month, and sometimes I'll write like 7 poems a day or whatever, so I was a bit worried when I started thinking of this poem that in the back of my mind I wondered if people would like it if I read it out. But I think that kind of went. So I still mainly write poems that I probably won't share with anyone. Like, I've got loads and loads of poems that I write that I wouldn't share. And I guess the book that I've just brought out is, there are a lot of poems that I've written that I probably hadn't read on stage, because I went through the more kind of spoken word, open mic way into poetry, even though I'd been writing for years. And so that lots of short poems I just never really read out, because I always thought, okay, everyone seems to be doing 2-minute poems, so I better choose longer ones to read out. But now I've started publishing the ones that I guess I wouldn't have maybe read out open mics, and realise that people like short poems just as much, if not more, because they're maybe not as boring, I find. Like with mine, I think, okay, this is a bit long now. I need to cut it. So yeah, I don't think I do. The only thing that I do really is that I still write for myself. I don't write for an audience. I'm just not that. I didn't sort of go through drama and stuff, so I don't know if I'd even know how to do that. But then I guess I just pick from those which ones I think I could read out. But actually, sometimes I think I shouldn't even do that, because you just don't know about people. Sometimes I go to an audience and like I did one gig and everyone was over 75. I'd say it was like a certain type of gig in this village near me. And I immediately thought, oh my God, I've got to be polite. So I took different poems out of my folder and started doing them. And then I did one slightly rude one. And this woman was like, we want more of that. It's like, who am I to judge? That's so stupid. You're just like me, but like with 50 years on you. That's so silly. So yeah, I think, now I just sort of, I don't know how I pick. Just what I think might be good for that day, I guess.
I was interested by like kind of how, I think you go to lots of like shows and stuff, and see people perform, that sometimes I think there's traps with spoken word, is you can fall into like sort of baiting the crowd to, you know what I mean? You can see sometimes people will say stuff because like it would have a reaction. I think you kind of have to really stay away from that, because you lose something. Then do you understand what I mean? Like there's like tropes and stuff. And
I think now, I don't know, I see a lot, like 2 gigs a week, I'd say. Just, I mean, from people doing support and stuff. I don't actually get to go out and see gigs really unless I'm reading at them. But I think there's sort of space for everything though, because some people I think that do write for audiences, like especially in poetry slams, a lot of people will do specific poems because they think this is like an emotional one for people, or this is a funny one or whatever. But I sort of think there's space for everything. The only thing that I would hate to happen, because I put my poems up on YouTube, but it was only after I was already working full time as a poet, and a teacher asked me to put them up, and then I put them up so that they could use them in class, and then realised, okay, that's quite a good place to put them, because obviously people can't get to gigs or pay for gigs or get transport to gigs and stuff like that all the time. But the thing I worry about that is it is going to become, I guess, like MTV did to music, where it becomes about image and not the writing. That's the only thing I worry about, I guess, with that kind of YouTube pushing things, which actually it's why I quite like Instagram as well in terms of social media, because there's a lot of poets coming through Instagram now and they're just posting the poem up, which I really like, actually. I think that there's space for everything, but I would just hate it. A few of the schools that I go into now, there's people that are really into writing poetry, but they've said they don't think they're like cool enough, or they look a certain way to go into the like spoken word scene, and I think that would be awful if that carried on.
100%. Yeah, 100%. So we kind of already touched on this a little bit, but something I always think about is like output. So like, kind of how much do you write? Like, do you ever sit down and be like, okay, I've got to write?
No, never. I've never done that. I never would. And I think that's probably why I have never had writer's block, because I don't really get it. And I probably would have writer's block if I had to write every day, because I can't think of, if something's not in my head, then I don't write it down, and I don't sit down and write. Maybe since I've had a kid now, I'm more aware that like there's, an hour in this week that I could possibly do any writing. But no, it's just whenever, like, I guess I'm writing a lot at the moment. It's not all in poems. Like, I've been writing loads of stories on my phone, and I drive to a lot of gigs, but I love getting the train. It's just a bit more expensive than driving. And I wrote a lot of stories yesterday, or I had to do an interview at the BBC, and then I was sat for like an hour waiting and wrote a story about a man that worked in a coffee shop. Just start writing stories.
So that's how it happens for you. It's kind of like
things come into my head, and then I get excited about them and like
that's
carry on, and then
might
add stuff. It's nice.
It's tough.
Otherwise it's kind of the thing I was worried more when I started, like you were saying, when you start performing, did you write in a different way? The thing I was most worried about was that if this became my full-time job, what would happen if I just didn't think of another poem, or didn't want to write another poem? But actually, there's enough other stuff in the world that I'd quite like to do that I think if I never had another poem in my head, be all right. I'd just go for a different job, I reckon. There's loads of things.
That's great. That's great. I'm sure you'll be all right though. I think you'll be okay. So you've done the like amazing, incredible, unbelievable thing that everybody aspires to do, is you're making a career out of your art, right?
Yeah.
Like that's amazing. So when did you realise that would be a possibility for you to be able to do that?
I guess, like I'm always never sure, to be honest. It's always a bit like, sometimes I sort of crave my old job. I worked for 6 years in an office, like a architects charity, working with young people and like town planning and stuff. And sometimes I crave like it was 3 days because I had a daughter at the time, so it was part-time. I crave that like stability and knowing that there's a paycheck coming in, because it can be a bit up and down. And I never gave up that job until the poetry was definitely going to be sort of on the same amount of time and salary, I guess. Mm-hmm. So I didn't I would never want to struggle to make a living like that. I always wanted to keep the day job. But I don't know when I knew, really. I got an Arts Council grant for £6,000. So, and that, to be honest, was about what I was spending a year. Like I don't buy a lot of stuff. I don't, especially if you go to poetry gigs to work, like it's like going out. I get to see places to go out afterwards. Like, that's the social life, basically.
You get your food paid for it. I got like a tab at the bar. I was like, oh my gosh.
Exactly. So yeah, and if I'm in a hotel, then I'll like make a packed lunch with the breakfast. But yeah, so I guess it was after that grant that I gave up the job. But I wasn't sure that I wasn't going to have to like then look for another one. And it just depends what I'm doing. Like I'm starting different work through the poetry, so it's not just gigging. There's like workshops and commissions, like you say, and I'm just starting doing like a radio program from next week, so that'll be like every fortnight. Okay, so
you kind of touched upon this a little bit earlier. So I recently read the article you wrote in the Financial Times.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is awesome. She talked already kind of about the different ways poetry is consumed nowadays. So kind of the modern ways, I suppose, like Instagram, you have YouTube and things like that. But you think this is a good thing, right? I agree with you for sure. Could you talk a little bit what your opinion is on like these new ways that poetry is accessible?
Yeah. I just think anything that makes... I don't mean anything that makes it more accessible in terms of like writing in a certain way. So I just mean... Yeah, well, like with any media, isn't it? You think if there's a poetry gig, and lots of art centres and theatres and stuff, they're quite intimidating places to go to still. Like I didn't grow up at all from a poor background. Like it was a very standardly middle class background, but we didn't go to the theatre. We didn't go, once a year at Christmas we went to see a theatre musical. But apart from that, not at all. And even when I started doing poetry gigs, I was still quite nervous to go into the spaces. I even paid for my own gig once. I can't remember where it was. It was in London, and I walked in. I was so intimidated by the person on the door, and they said, "Oh, it's £5." So I gave them the money, and then the organiser was like, "Holly, what are you doing?" I don't know. And I don't live in a city. I live in a village. So all different things like social media. I just think, I guess for parents, it's amazing because they can hardly leave the house. For young people that need to bug a lift off their mum, dad, if they're lucky enough to have a mum and dad that are going to take them places, or someone that can take them places. If people have the money to go to see a show, like often they're like £10 or more. Like there's so many obstacles. Or if people just happen to not be working that night, or you've got childcare for that night or whatever. So I feel like social media makes it more horizontal, I guess. Like it's not only the privileged or the confident people, or people that live in a city that can go and see a gig. Like me, I live in a village, and I've got a daughter, and when I go out, I go to work. But when I can't leave the house. So most of the shows that I've ever seen have been on YouTube. Like stand-up comedy, I watch all the time on YouTube. Poetry, I read a lot on Instagram, and books. One thing, the Financial Times article, because that was about that, wasn't it? And one of the things that I found really annoying about it is that they changed a lot of the words that I used for no reason. So I was like in a real mardy about it. Just silly little things, like I'd said started, and they changed it to like moved into public forums or something. So So it was a bit annoying having your language corrected when they asked me to speak about why poetry was becoming more accessible. Yeah, like some edits that you have to do, and then some I was sort of, I found it quite interesting how they did it. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it's just basically because it means that more people can share it. Although, saying that, I hate the sort of articles that talk about how it's great that poetry is not like dead old white men anymore. Mm-hmm. You know, like quite a lot of people are like, oh, we always thought it was like dead old white men you have to study in school, but you know, it's all young and it's all. But I just don't agree with that. I think lots of those dead old white men were absolutely brilliant writers. And most of the people I know who do spoken word, specifically who are probably seen as these like young trendy poets, they've read like poetry back from 300 years old. Like they love poetry. They're not just...
Poetry's poetry, right? It's
exactly. And there's so many different forms and
So why do you think there is then this kind of the Instagram poets are receiving like a lot of backlash, right? You've seen that in the news and stuff. What do you think is like the root of that? What's the psyche behind that?
I think journalists are asked to write articles and they have to write it. Really? I think because I genuinely don't think any poet cares. Yeah. Really. And maybe a few do, but most of them don't. Like the last book was published by Picador and I was worried because I thought they were like a traditional publisher and maybe they wouldn't like this, but it's rubbish. Like everyone's interested in different stuff and I don't know, like I was mentioning the haiku in that article. It's like one of the oldest poetry forms, one of the most like revered types of poetry that people work for years and years and years. Getting on, like that's perfect on Instagram. There's no reason why it's not all right to publish. You know, look, there's I think with Instagram, because it's so small. Obviously, the poems are shorter, but you know, there's as much skill I think is trying to get a point across in like 140 words as there is in a sort of form of a haiku, I think. I think there's more things to worry about, aren't there, really, in life?
I'm happy that poetry is everywhere in that respect, really. Like, it's literally in the palm of your hand. Like, it's so... Yeah, and I'm hoping that it's, like, it continues and, like...
and I think it will.
Everywhere, you know.
Exactly, and it's not taken away from, like, people are buying more books than they did 4 years ago. It's not like people are only... I think, you know, sometimes I get told off, if you put that on Instagram, it'll stop people buying books, or if you read that poem on YouTube, people won't buy the book, but... It hasn't happened like that for me. It seems like the more they see it, the more likely they are to support you, and then they might buy someone else's poetry book. And same with other people making them. You know, they might buy something from like Bern and I, who publish a lot of spoken word artists, and then they might see my book. I think it all supports each other. It's not like the market is saturated with poetry. It's still like quite a small art form. Yeah,
and you're saying that it's kind of that always been popular. Right? It's just that it's consumed in maybe a different kind of way or something. It's not like it's come out of nowhere, like, oh my gosh, poetry's invented, like, Jesus, old as hell, like, you know, so,
exactly.
So you said also one of the reasons you think maybe, I don't know if you're kind of joking or not, but one of the reasons that poetry's getting a little bit of attention is because maybe it's better at the moment.
That was meant to be a joke, but they took out the question. That was another edit that they made. I was like, it made me sound serious. I don't think poetry's got better. I think well, it probably should have, like, other things that, like, technology's got better. We should have, you know, if our brains are meant to sort of evolve, maybe our writing should evolve. I don't know. I feel like poetry gets better over a person's lifetime, though. Most of the people that I see who are sort of 70 or 80, that's what I aspire to be. I hope that's why I like being in that, in the kind of, I don't know, arts world of poetry rather than... say music, I guess, because there's so many people that do music that think, oh my god, I'm like 30 now, I better stop. You know, that kind of stupid attitude. Whereas I think I don't know why people think that, like with every job you should surely just learn more and get better. And I think poetry, people do see it like that. Like older poets are sort of looked up to more. And kind of fair enough, I think. Like they've been practicing more, they've written more, they should have got better, hopefully.
I hope so. Okay, so this show, Girls, 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 is all about like celebrating women and inspiring women. And I think you're quite an inspiring woman, for sure to me anyways, and I think to a lot of other people. So you're someone who's achieved like great success in your field of work. So what advice would you give to young women who are, so a lot of them listen to this show, looking to pursue their own dreams, be it poetry or otherwise?
To be honest, I would just say keep practicing, keep doing it. Like, don't throw stuff out. I guess especially just with poetry, I don't know about other industries too much, but you know, just keep doing it. Like, hone your skills, go and learn it. Or I say that actually, but then I didn't study poetry, so maybe spread it out as well. You know, you don't necessarily need to study something that I don't know, it's hard to know what you're going to do when you're older. Like, I studied French and German, then economics, so I thought I would be going into a job in economics, which has nothing to do with what I'm doing now. I just say keep doing it. I guess that's how I've done it. Just keep writing and keep practicing, and also if you're, and like, share it. I think that's one of the most important things with most stuff. If I hadn't, which would have been fine, if I'd never shared any of my poems, obviously wouldn't be doing it as a job. And it was really like my ex-boyfriend, the father of my daughter, who kind of pushed me to share it with other people. And I was so scared to do that. Like, I was so scared that people were going to tell me, I don't know, that they didn't like it, that was crap, but like, really, what's the worst that can happen? My mum said that. She was like, Holly, if you want to try something, like, really, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
And my mum's a nurse, and this might be a bit ripped, but she does lots of smear tests. I don't know if any of the listeners will be at the age where you have to have that. I think you have to be 21 now to do it. But she was like, if I make a mistake doing that, I can mess up a female's private parts. If you make a mistake doing your poetry, like, no one's getting hurt. Nothing, you know, there's nothing bad that can happen from it. I'd also, like, on a practical level, I'd say share stuff with real human beings first. Like, if there's something that you like, join a club, like, meet other people that like it. Online or in real life, I would just say probably don't go on your own, put stuff on YouTube by yourself, for example, because I think there's quite a lot of hate out there. And actually, if I'd have put the poems up before I was doing it before I'd done a lot of open mic nights, I guess, and gigs, and had got the feedback, like, I don't know, just stupid stuff that shouldn't matter, but being called, like, ugly or whore, ginger rat, like, there's quite
I've heard that too.
Exactly. I'm not sure if I'd have carried it on if I'd have got that back even when I was 25 rather than, like, 31. So yeah, like, share it with real life people, and don't be embarrassed as well. That's a bit of a thing, I think. If you say you like something, if your family's not into it, or if they think it's like arty farty rubbish or whatever, you know, that sort of thing, don't be embarrassed if you're passionate about something. Just try. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, 100%.
Unless you want to be a surgeon, then you could do damage, but
I got a disclaimer though, we talk about vaginas a lot, so you're happy to talk about smear tests or whatever.
Okay,
gynecology is up for.
Well, that's where I do a lot of my gigs are at gynecology conferences now.
That's sick.
Yeah, it's fun.
That's so cool.
That's where people are the most drunk.
Hopefully not in practice though. Right?
No, not in practice.
You, as you mentioned before, you got your new book, Plum.
Yeah.
It contains lots of, like, writing from like your teenage years. Was that hard to put in there? Do you feel kind of protective of it, or?
Not really. No, I just think, I don't know, I'm really bored of taboos, I guess. I'm really bored of, like, not talking about certain things because it's meant to be secret. Things like, I guess, like periods or anything. Even I saw a pack for, like, Always Ultra the other day in a school that I was working in, and they were doing talks about periods to the girls, and it said on the front, it was all pink and it had pretty bows on it, and it said, shh, it's your secret. I was like, are we still talking about it like that? Like, seriously, you bleed every month. It's not like this pretty thing that you need to, like, so I'm sort of I'm just kind of bored of that. And the poems that I wrote when I was younger, I put them in because I thought, well, I'm writing a book about, or I didn't write it. I never write a book to publish it. It was, they asked me to publish it, and then I, like, take poems that I've already written, basically. But there were loads about childhood, loads about teenage years, and I thought, why am I putting stuff that I've written at 30 about being 10 in, and not putting, like, a couple of poems I actually wrote when I was that age? Because who's to say I'm cleverer now than I was at 8? I don't think I am.
Yeah.
Probably kids. I think kids are a lot smarter than adults, really. They seem to know what makes them happy. They know how to have fun a lot more than we do. Yeah, no, it was fine. I've had lots of friends, like, sort of drunkenly laugh at all my diaries anyway, so I thought if they find it funny how terrible these poems are I wrote when I was 15, maybe other people have a laugh, really. Yeah, I'm not so precious about them. That's really.
No worries. So you write a lot about motherhood. You talk a lot about it and things like that. So of course, because you're a mother, right? And you have a little girl. So what do you see are the main differences about the world that you grew up in to the one that she's grown up in as a little lass?
I think probably just the social media and the adverts. That's the main thing. And maybe there's more of a split in gender. So when I was little, there was a bit of a split with like toys, but there wasn't like girls Lego, boys Lego, girls this, boys this, girls this, boys this. There wasn't, if you went into a bike shop, there wasn't like girls' bikes had baskets, boys' bikes didn't, boys' bikes were red, girls' bikes were purple. There was none of this stuff. Like even going into Halfords, the height chart was different. So to get her measured for a bike, she was like had a height chart with a Barbie on it or something, and the boys had a height chart with a dinosaur or something. So it wasn't as split when I was little, and also there wasn't as much. Well, there wasn't any internet, there wasn't any mobile phones. So I think that's the one thing that because I'm not so anti-social media. I think there's some terrible things about it, but also brilliant things. Like some people that I know would be so lonely had it not been for like 3 o'clock Mumsnet messages, or I guess especially parents and stuff. The only thing I worry about is being able to take photos of everything, because I think it just gets really boring. And I think parties are getting a bit boring now when people tend to be on their phone all the time, or just silly things like when I was little, if you went out, you could do silly stuff and you weren't worried someone could take your photo and put it online. Yeah. Even, I could get, it is an important thing. I could have privacy and, the first snog or the first drunken fool I made out of myself. I imagine now that might be all over Facebook. Yeah. And I think that's rubbish. I sort of would love her to be able to, not that I want her to do these things, but fall over, trip over on the field after drinking too much Archers when she's 18, I should say, and someone not take a photo of her. That's the thing that I just think, where is this fun? Yeah, and to just be able to have fun without thinking this needs to be filmed and I need to tell everyone that I'm having fun, that sort of thing. So I think that's the main thing that I think, But then, hopefully, they seem to be getting a bit bored of it. I heard her the other day telling one of her friends off, because one of her friends, the only one with a phone already, she was on the phone and the other two were like, come on, we're trying to play mums and dads, you're so boring. I was like, this is excellent.
Maybe it's going the other way,
Hopefully. Yeah.
Also, it's really interesting you talk about kind of the gender divide and stuff, because that's it seems to be something that should have got better. They're not completely worse.
No, but it makes so much money. I think most of these things really, they just make so much money. Girls and boys, if they're brothers and sisters, if you can make the mum buy them 2 sets of Lego rather than 1, then it's like double the profit. So really, I don't think it's going to go away, but I do think it shapes a lot of the way that little girls and boys think that they should act. So hopefully it'll change. But it puts a lot of pressure on kids everyone wants to fit in, don't they? It's not like a kid's going to be like, I want to, be against the norm, really. That's not really how it works, I don't think. Hopefully it'll change.
I hope so. For the sake of us all.
Well, I think so. There's enough blogs, and there's enough other ways for kids to express themselves as well, which is another reason I think social media is really good, because you can go against those grains, and hopefully, fingers crossed.
Sorry. So this is the very, very final question. It's a question we always ask our guests. And it's just, what is the best thing that you think about being a girl?
All right, I'll just say the thing that come into my head, really. I think the best thing about being a girl is having sexual organs that you can touch for 5 hours and build up momentum and momentum and momentum, and then just carry on doing that. It's a very free and healthy hobby that you can have.
Yes, and it's free. It's completely free and prior to your own home. That's a great answer. Thank you so much.
Masturbation, that's what I want.
That's amazing. And on that note, we have to finish up the interview now. Thank you so much for talking to us.
No problem.
That was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And girls.